Good morning, everybody, and happy Friday. Welcome back to your Lunch Break Live. This is what we do every day. My name is Ivana, if you are new here. And today we're going to wrap up our week by talking about something that most of us, if you live in Birmingham or even if you live across Alabama, are familiar with, and that is the Alabama Theater. And it's neighbor, the Lyric Theater, as well. We'll touch on the Lyric while we are here. But most of us, again, especially if you were in Birmingham, are familiar with the beautiful Alabama Theater sign that sits on 3rd Avenue and on 18th Street, excuse me. And if you are like me, you have many fond memories of going and seeing movies there, going to events at the theater, and doing kind of normal pre-COVID activities there. So today I am joined by Glennie Brock. Glennie is the outreach coordinator for Birmingham Landmarks. Birmingham Landmarks is the nonprofit that owns and operates both the Alabama Theater and the Lyric Theater. So Glennie is here today to talk about the effects of COVID on the theater and what they are doing now and how you can help to save this historic venue. Glennie, thanks so much for coming today to talk a little bit about the Alabama Theater and kind of remind us that I think a lot of us, especially like myself, are spoiled to the theater. We think we're always going to have it. And so thank you for coming, reminding us that this is it's a privilege to have the Alabama Theater, and we need to make sure that we save it. So first of all, let's start off by talking about what have the effects of COVID had on the theater.
You know, it has really been a remarkable and incredibly difficult season for the theater, as it has been for, companies, organizations, families all over the world. But we closed both the Alabama and the Lyric in March. So at this point, we have canceled or postponed more than 120 events. By the end of the year, we're looking at a revenue shortfall of about $2.5 million. I think something that a lot of people don't understand is that the Alabama and the Lyric do not receive regular funding from the city or from the state. Over the years, we have had an incredible number of very generous donors, corporate donors and individual donors, but we get 90% of our revenue from hosting events. That means concerts, that means movies, dance recitals, graduations, all kinds of weddings, all kinds of civic and social events. And right now the theaters are dark, and it's so heartbreaking. Everybody that works there, we are used to walking around the theaters, with most of the lights not on, but it's usually in service of getting ready for an event. But right now it's really tough and really sad for it to have been dark for so long.
And I know, like we said earlier, the theater's been closed since I believe March the 16th. Now, you did open a little bit earlier this month for the first event. That was a showing of Steel Magnolias, and a perfect first event. But you talk about just being closed for that long. Now, something that if you're a homeowner, you understand, even if nobody's in the home, like if nobody's in the theater, you still have costs there. So what have the costs been to operate the theater even when it was shut down and nobody was there?
It's not just having a home that you own. It's having one home that is 103 years old, let me think, 107.
I'm not good at math. I cannot help.
Another one that is, more than 90 years old. And one of the things I always like to explain to people about the Alabama, just in terms of talking about the cost, is that place has 8,000 light bulbs. So our power bill each month is pretty radical. Right now, even with the theaters dark, with us not having events there, we still have to maintain these buildings and keep them safe and clean and in good shape. So our monthly expenses, even with the theater closed, are about $85,000 a month.
And that's a huge number.
It is a huge number, and it is really, it's a staggering number. But if you think about it, these places are not museums. They are like living, working venues where there's a lot of decorative plaster. There's fabric. There's all kind of equipment that has to be maintained, whether there are people in the theater or not. Steel Magnolias was really special. We showed that as a fundraiser, and it's sort of like a single movie substitute for what would have been our summer film series. And it was sold out, but sold out in as we follow the social distancing guidelines, that means 630 tickets out instead of 2,000. So, in our movies in the past, it's usually general admission, and a sellout, like I said, is 2,000. But so what we did with Steel Magnolia is that we hope to do again as we can. 630 was the maximum, and there was assigned seating, so people could buy tickets in pairs or in groups of 4. And this allowed people, to be together with their parties, but also practice social distancing, which we take very seriously. People have to wear masks to come into the Alabama Theater, and we took everybody's temperature at the door. It was wonderful. It was one of the most special nights in Alabama theater history, just because it meant so much for so many people to be back there. But
now, I know you talk about the different things you did for Steel Magnolias. You had the temperature checks. You sold specific seats instead of general admission, so people knew where they were going. They could walk in, get to their seat, sit down. And you did those in pairs or groups of 4. Now, you talked about people having to wear their masks. Did you require masks be worn during the movie if you were in your seat?
You could take off your mask if you are eating popcorn or drinking Coca-Cola or Tito's handmade vodka or any of the other lovely beverages we have on offer there. But, otherwise we expected people to keep their masks on for, their own safety, for the safety of other moviegoers. And, one of the things, of course, that one of the great losses that none of us had really thought about is the sing-along, right? Like the Mighty Wurlitzer I tell people all the time that the Mighty Wurlitzer is the engine that runs Third Avenue. It is the reason that the Alabama was saved. Ultimately, it's the reason that the Lyric was saved. I think you could make a good argument that, the Alabama was saved in 1987 because of that organ. So there's a fairly good argument that the McWane Center might not have located downtown were it not for this. I mean, the Alabama Theater has been working on downtown revitalization for a long time, but the sing-along before each movie is, one of the most special parts of going to the Alabama Theater. And in this case, our moviegoers got to hear the organ, but singing along is not really an option, right? You don't want all this respiration happening.
I didn't even think about that, and I just it makes me sad because I have been to so many movies at the Alabama and experienced that and experienced the organ and that it's really irreplaceable.
Oh yeah, I mean it is a one of a kind. We are so lucky to have it, and I go on and on about that organ all the time. But yeah, so we had to make a lot of adjustments. I mean, as everybody doing everything right now, we are making all kinds of adjustments because we want to survive. And I don't think the Alabama and the Lyric have never been in a situation this precarious. I mean,
well, and tell me about that. I know, like we said earlier, there are people like me who just expect it to be open and expect these theaters, especially the Alabama, because it's been open in my lifetime longer than the Lyric. But what is the how bad is this situation? Are we really at risk of losing the Alabama and the Lyric theaters?
I think that is a real risk right now. I mean, really, for the first time ever. Because, previously the Alabama was, really in danger of demolition in the 1980s. And the Lyric, its greatest peril for years was neglect. But venues like ours have not been able to have the same kind of recovery in this pandemic that other businesses have. I mean, again, like I said, a 630 seat so-called sellout is really different than a 2,000 seat sellout. Like the reality is we're barely covering we broke even with Steel Magnolias, but we're barely covering our costs. And again, if we are getting 90% of our funding from live events, but we have these small minimum capacities that we can, accommodate people safely for these live events. This is something that we're seeing industry-wide, frankly, because, again, part of the reality is a concert cannot, in order for a concert to make money, that means the promoter to make money, the musicians to make money, the venue to make money, we have to be able to sell 75% of the tickets. And part of the reality where we are is we expect that we're not going to be able to operate at full capacity until late next year, because if we only have 50% seating capacity in the venue, or less than 50%, a promoter is not going to do that, or a musician is not going to do that, because it's impossible to cover the costs. I mean, it is just a difficult proposition all around. This is why we have launched a GoFundMe, which all of your viewers can get to if they go to AL.com. Our goal in that GoFundMe is $500,000. And we are confident and hopeful we are going to get there. So far, we have raised more than $140,000, which is great. But like I said, we are hopeful, but it is serious. This is radically different than any kind of request for donations that we have ever made. I never thought that I would be saying we have to save the lyric again. I did and still do view that as like a once in a lifetime thing. Save the lyric. And we did it. That place was closed for more than 50 years and we saved it. And it's one of the great joys of my life to have been a part of that. And I never thought I'd be saying it again, but here we are.
And we have so many people saying that they love our historic theaters. We have Karen who says her first movie at the Alabama was Star Trek II. Karen, I did not see Star Trek II there, but I do love all the movies that I have seen at the Alabama. I want to ask you, I know people are talking about how much they love it. If you want to help, you can go to the Alabama Theater's website. There is a link to their GoFundMe there. $500,000 is the goal on that GoFundMe. Now, I have one question, Glennie, and that is, you said earlier, this is something that is not necessarily unique to Alabama. This is something that across the country and even the world are facing. What is being done, or do you know what is being done in other states that have maybe similar historic theaters or historic venues? Are they receiving any sort of state funding? Is that something y'all are looking to do for the Alabama?
It varies widely and wildly. The Lyric and the Alabama are both part of something called the League of Historic American Theaters. LHAT does not sound so snappy, but if you say we're in the league, it sounds like we are superheroes, which we are. I believe that everybody who is a champion of historic theaters is a superhero of a sort. We have been a part of something that you can get more information about at saveourstages.com. We and several other theaters in the league and venues, of various sizes across the country, even those that are not historic, are really hoping that Congress passes an aid package that will include venues like ours who have like a unique set of circumstances. So if you want to, wherever your viewers are, whether they are in Birmingham, in Alabama, or elsewhere, saveourstages.com is a really good resource. And it's very, everybody says this about everything, but it's very fast. It will take you less than 30 seconds to send a message to your legislator to say that places like the Alabama Theater and the Lyric Theater matter to you, and you want to continue to have them as part of your civic life.
And that is saveourstages.com.
Correct.
Okay. So if you want to sign that note, you can do so on saveourstages.com that Glennie was talking about. Glennie, do you know when that is supposed to be before Congress?
I'm not sure on that. There are regular updates on that site, and it's sort of as with many things in the political realm right now, it is a complex and ongoing process. There are a lot of people who have a lot of needs competing for a limited number of resources, but
We've got a comment that I think a lot of people are going to share the same sorrow. Here. It's from Leanne. She says, the Rocky Horror Picture Show Masquerade Ball. She put a sad face that I never thought this could continue all the way to October. Leanne, I think you're right. I talked to so many people, and, in March we said, oh, this is awful. We hate this, but I'm going to reschedule my event to May. Or even, oh, I'll reschedule to July and we'll be fine. No problem. We'll be past it. So, Leanne, I think that you will be I think so many people are probably going to join you in that sadness about Rocky Horror Picture Show. And Glennie, tell us, number one, any updates on that ball, and number two, something that so many people hold dear, and that is the holiday film series. Where do we stand on those two events?
So Rocky Horror is, as I know, happening elsewhere. I wish that maybe it's at Avondale. We will really miss having it at the Alabama. It is a thing that has been very special for us, and a really a thing that we are glad that they are thriving elsewhere. We will miss them at the Alabama. I do want to say, as of right now, something else that's incredibly important to us is, for the last 41 years, the Alabama chapter of the American Theater Organ Society has presented the silent film Phantom of the Opera every October. So we are hopeful that that is going to happen. We are working on the details of figuring out how we can do that. I always say that Phantom for the organ guys is like the prom. It is the biggest deal, but there is an extraordinary organist named Tom Helms, and he is carried to the stage in a casket, and then ascends to the organ, to the mighty Wurlitzer, and he plays a live accompaniment to this silent film. He plays the organ for 108 minutes without stopping. It is amazing.
That's why he's in the casket, because it's exhausting.
Right. That's why he has to be put back in the. We keep him in that casket all year,
obviously.
So that, that is a thing that's been happening even longer than Rocky Horror, really longer than anything, the last 41 years at the Alabama. So we are hopeful that that will happen in some form. The PNC Holiday Film Series, we are working on what is possible. We are very hopeful about it. And like everybody else, we are doing our best to, we just say heads high, hands clean. We are going forward as best we can. And we really hope that there will be some version of that Birmingham tradition. It is something that is incredibly important to this city, and we hope that we can keep it going.
Well, and, I think that you're going to have a lot of people who probably are wondering, well, Steel Magnolia sold out, which again is that just over 600 tickets and not the 2,000 that the Alabama normally sells out. If you've ever tried to go to Christmas Vacation, Elf, any of those very popular Christmas movies, you know that they sell out extremely quickly in normal time. So let's get back to Steel Magnolias, around 600 people. That was a sellout for the allotted number of tickets. Yeah. Now, I have a feeling people are wondering, well, if that was a success in the way it could be, why don't you just hold a bunch more events similar to that?
It is in the realm of possibility, but again, this has to be staggered, and we have to be mindful of the health protocols. I mean, really what the building can accommodate, and we are just sort of taking it as it comes. If we could open and show movies every night, we would, but for a lot of reasons, that is just not possible right now. I mean, the primary reason being the health and safety of our audiences and our staff. So believe me, we miss opening those doors as much as anybody. And we are going to do it as we can, but we're only going to do it safely and responsibly.
We've got Leanne, who also said she's seen Phantom at the Alabama, and that is amazing. So she's getting chills just thinking about it. I wish I had seen that. I've got to get the opportunity to do it, so we got to save the theater. But Leanne also makes another point, and I'm just wondering if this is something that you and your team at Birmingham Landmarks have thought about. And she says, could you possibly buy access to watch from home, like selling tickets, even though you don't have a full house, and just airing maybe the organ playing and then airing the show virtually?
We have done a few Facebook Live things, like live casts that were free, and we are exploring several different possibilities about streaming events. Again, some of it comes down to cost and the safety of our staff and volunteers. So we love suggestions. We're open to all kinds of suggestions, and what we can implement, we'll be glad to. So keep them coming. We really, it is always incredibly important to us to hear from people to whom the Alabama and Lyric really matter. So.
Now, we know you gave us that GoFundMe. You can get to it from the Alabama Theater's website. I think my wonderful producer actually put that in the comment thread if you need it. But also, yes, no, she is gold. But let's talk about that number, 500,000. Why that specific number? If you got to 500,000, would that amount of money keep the theaters going for the rest of the year?
Certainly for the rest of the year, but we arrived at that number based primarily on our expenses while the theaters are closed and while we have to be closed because of health guidelines, coming from the county, the state, the CDC. Again, our monthly average cost while we're not having events is $85,000. Like, it's like we have to protect and preserve those places and keep them in good working order, whether we are having events there or not. Like, some of your viewers may have seen the Lyric when it was empty. I used to say that place was like a great urban laboratory where somebody went like, hey, what happens if you just don't touch a building for like 50 years? Well, it doesn't take 50 years for things to get askew, awry. And, the stewardship of those places is really important to us. Part of the mission of Birmingham Landmarks, the explicit mission, is to preserve and protect the Alabama, the Lyric, and other historic buildings for the enjoyment and enrichment of the lives of Alabama citizens and their descendants. Like, that is a big, lofty mouthful, but we take it very seriously. And it is preservation, not just for preservation's sake, but for its use. So we want to, that amount of money is about getting us through so that when we can open the doors again, those places are as beautiful or more so than they were when we closed them.
That's a great note. Great note to end on here, Glennie. Now, I have to also add that Leanne jumped back in. She said, I'm not very tech savvy. I don't have the ideas on how. I just can give you the idea. So, Leanne, we still appreciate the idea. We've got some people saying, look, that's a great idea. I'd pay for it. So, something to consider. Again, if you want to help save the Alabama Theater, you can go to alabamatheater.com. Find their link to the GoFundMe, which is aiming to raise $500,000 to save the Alabama Theater. You can find more information on saving stages across the U.S. at saveourstages.com. So thank you so much, Glennie. And I appreciate all of your time. We hope to have maybe some good news from the Alabama and the Lyric Theater soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody else. We will see you on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend.
Bye.